Hey, welcome in, everybody. Joe Powers here with you, getting ready for episode 1 of the 2025 season, I should say, our Holy Smokes Coaches pregame show, brought to you again by our friends at Holy Smokes with Coach Roger Holmes here. Coach, how you doing this morning, my friend? Good to see you bright and early always as we get ready to talk Dublin football against one of your oldest and dearest rivalries.
Well, I don't know about dearest, but I did look it up the other day because I'd been telling people for quite some time that Dublin's two oldest rivals were Swainsboro and Dodge County. Swainsboro High School, we've played more than anybody, substantially more. Uh, Dodge County also used to have a high school called Eastman. So I don't know whether Eastman High School became Dodge County or whatever. But if you add those two together, we'd actually played this high school in Dodge County more than we had the one in Swainsboro. So technically, Swainsboro High School is Dublin's oldest rival. And again, I don't know that I would say dearest because they've had their share of wins against Dublin for sure.
Yeah, you see our
But that's what makes a rivalry, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's what makes it a good game, Coach. You got to give them one every now and again, right?
I don't like to, but yeah, sometimes they just take it.
There you go. You see on the screen there our graphic 46, 26, 2. And I don't know what the other two are for. I guess they're disputed games, but that's the record against Swainsboro there in school history. And, Coach, in your tenure here, you're 11-8 against the Tigers from Swainsboro. So not bad. You're on the winning side of that coin.
Yeah, well, I mean, those 8 sure hurt.
I hear you, Coach. Well, before we get into talking about the history and all that fun stuff, let's talk a little bit about what we saw briefly in our season scrimmage opener, if you will, against Hawkinsville. They were in the Shamrock Bowl this past Friday, and we saw some good things. Trav Bostic really put on a show in all 3 phases of the game. Offensive line seemed to be getting a good push, getting to the second layer and blocking, and our senior quarterback, Jeff Davis, there did a pretty good job. I know we had a few more hankies on the field than we'd like, but I'll let you talk about all that. Tell me your thoughts.
You've summed it up really well. I was pleased with it being the first scrimmage. There's no question about that. Again, I think you hit the nail on the head. I felt like Jeff Davis did a really good job of managing the tempo, managing the game, getting guys in and out of the huddle. That part went well. Felt like our offensive line played pretty much assignment-free eras, with football and so on and so forth. We had a few, but probably the biggest issue that we had, Joe, was some unforced errors with penalties. And there were probably 3 or 4 more that could have been called, a back leaning or moving when it was snapped. So if we can clean that up, I think that would be huge in this opening game of the season. And then defensively, the biggest challenge was so many young players and so many different formations and unbalanced looks and the things that Hawkinsville brought to the table. That was the biggest concern we had, was could we get lined up? And we did a pretty good job of that. We ran to the ball well. We had 4 or 5 missed open field tackles. And that's something that you really anticipate getting better with as the season goes along, because you're trying to protect your guys somewhat in practice when you're in team and you have those quick whistles, and guys sometimes develop bad habits with that. So we were pleased. We got out of it pretty much healthy for the most part. And now, as you mentioned, we get to jump in the frying pan with a really solid team that's on a mission to fix a year that just didn't go Swainsboro's way last year compared to what Swainsboro normally is.
Yeah. Absolutely right, Coach. And I was looking at Swainsboro's roster here. You know, it looks like maybe they've got, if I've counted correctly, quickly this morning, 11 or 12 seniors on that squad. You know, not necessarily a huge senior class, but not bad considering the size schools that we play in here. But what are you expecting to see as far as new faces in new places for the Tigers, much like we've addressed with the Irish prior to the scrimmage last week?
Well, I start out when you look at them offensively, I think their starting quarterback, and they're going to use some wildcat stuff and some different people at quarterback, but the starting quarterback's a little lefty that he's not so little anymore, who threw 2 touchdown passes really that ended up beating us when he was a freshman over here. He threw a couple of balls up to DeMello Jones, and he went up and got them and made plays. And when that young man's in the game, he does a really good job of throwing the RPO game and putting your linebackers in conflict with that type stuff. And, he's kind of the passing quarterback, if you will. And then they bring in a couple of young men at quarterback that are going to be more of your quarterback run game, your zone read, your power read, some of those type things. And they add a dimension. They may throw the football great, but they really didn't. Those kids, they didn't let them put the ball in the air much at all in their scrimmage the other night. A couple of really good running backs. They've got a good freshman running back over there that's got some size to him. And, whenever you play Swainsboro, you've got a school that often reminds you of a Dublin football team, the type of talent that's there, the body sizes. So all in all, it's been a, kind of looking at yourself. When I look at them defensively, 3 things jump out. Okay, 2 of those are returning starting defensive linemen. Now, I think they only returned 4 off of the defense that started against us last year. I'm not sure how they finished the year, but from our game last year, there are only 4. Well, 2 of those, one of them is Christian Tarver at defensive end. Heck of a football player. He's 6'1", he's 225, he's quick, wears number 54. He also is really one of the only guys they've got in that front 7 that are going to go both ways pretty much all night. He plays the left tackle for them and does a great job of pulling. Another young man that played defensive end last year, they've slid him inside to a defensive tackle, is Aiden Foskey. Okay, Aiden is a 6'1", 245-pound D lineman. And if I had to guess, that's part of the Foskey family. One of those young men played for me, Chopper. That they lived over at Adrian at that time when I first got here, and they were going to school in Dublin. But I'd almost bet it's that family tree, and he is a heck of a football player. Now, they've got a young man playing linebacker that hadn't played yet. He didn't play in the scrimmage the other night, but he's in uniform. Tobias Smith, wears number 9, is without question a Power 5 recruit. He's only a junior. He's 6'3". He weighs about 225. He's nasty. He's hungry. He can run. All of this is based on last year's film, and now he's a year bigger and a year stronger. And I think Coach Roberts probably is just holding that young man, trying to make sure you get him on the bus for game 1.
Right. Well, I can understand that. You're looking at the roster here, Tobias Smith, the Max Preps roster that I'm referring to. They have him listed as 6'3", 205, and I'm sure you're saying 225. He's probably going to be bigger than that, Coach, by the time we see him.
I don't think they updated their roster from last year because there's several young men with numbers that are in the game for them, and the number is nowhere to be found on the roster.
Yeah.
So I think they just haven't updated. They deleted people from last year, and they hadn't added anybody that's new.
I got you. Well, let's talk a little bit since we talked about the defensive front there for Swainsboro for just a minute. Let's talk about what we saw on the field from our defensive front. The guys looked fresh. We were able to rotate bodies in the scrimmage against Hawkinsville. Good push, good size, good strength up front, it looked like, for the Irish. And I was proud to see them able to get that initial push, make separation, and create plays and tackles there in the box. Coach, what are your thoughts about how we did on the defensive front?
Our defensive line should be the strength of our football team, and if it's not, then we're going to be in trouble. We've got some experience there, and as you mentioned, we've got some size. I think, a backup who had a pretty good night for us the other night that we need to make sure he can play in this rotation. Okay, is Blake Lukey, number 55. We thought Blake made some plays and did a really good job for us. Inside we're starting Deontay Walker. It's his first start in there, and we thought, if we can get him to play with a little bit better pad level, but he did some good things for us inside at D tackle. The area that's the big question mark for us is our linebacker play.
Right.
And overall, we thought it was a pretty good night for our linebacking crew. They made some plays for us. They ran to the football. They got lined up well. However, again, you go back to Swainsboro, they've got some big play capabilities, and linebacker play is just got to continue to improve. And then on the back end, I thought we played pretty good the other night, although our opponent wasn't as proficient at throwing the football as some people were going to see.
Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit. Hall of Famer Reggie Cordy and I, of course, up there in the booth, missing our sideline reporter, Tommy Howell, who will be with us this week. But we were talking about that during the broadcast. It looked like the defensive backs were staying in phase with the receivers in the passing opportunities that Hawkinsville presented, though, the ball play you couldn't really see because the balls weren't really where they needed to be thrown, but it did look like we were in good position, good phase with the guys. And really, I want to talk a little bit about a young man that I saw playing both ways, and that's big. Let me make sure I say his name back. Big Mando Stanley, who was doing well on that offensive and defensive front there. Coach, talk a little bit about those big guys inside?
Mando's a heck of a football player for us, and he was actually we had hoped that we were going to be able to use him as our number 2 center and keep him fresh, where he was just playing defensively. But it didn't work out that way. Mando proved that he needed to be in that offensive line, and he's earned that spot there. Now he's going to have a major, major chore this week. Not only when I say major, they've got him an offensive guard in there that's about 6'5" and weighs about 330 pounds. He played left tackle for him last year. Mando better have a good night on the defensive side of the football, because if he doesn't, this guy's going to he will tee off and bring it, But Mando is, he's only about 5'10". He weighs about 260, but he's a 600-pound squatter. He's a very strong young man that just has a big heart and plays well. So very pleased with not only his talents, but his leadership and his mental toughness.
Walden looked pretty good in there on that offensive front too the other day. I called his name a couple of times. Looked like he was moving pretty well.
He moves around good, and that's another big body for us that is back playing the right tackle position for us from last year. The biggest thing that we've got to do is we've got to take a little bit of weight off of DeMarchio. Mm-hmm. His big tail has grown and put on probably 30 pounds since last year. And he's got to play himself a little bit back into shape. We need to trim him up a little bit. He appears to be, a step slower right now than he was this time last year. And he's working hard. I'm not trying to be critical of DeMarchio, but to get him really, really, really where we want him to be. We need to trim about 15 off of him. And now at a 300-pounder, he can still be a lean, mean fighting machine.
I hear you, Coach. Well, now let's turn right forward to that Swainsboro game we have coming up this week. Again, your coach's show here brought to you by Holy Smokes Barbecue. We appreciate those guys presenting this show each and every week. But now let's talk about the core of what everybody wants to talk about and what we saw a lot of flash from against Hawkinsville in that scrimmage. Dorian Carcamo did a great job, I thought, getting the ball around the edge there. As I look at my roster here to my left, Trav Bostic, we talked about him, of course, and Dontavius Cannon, Jeff Davis. Let's talk about those four and what you're wanting to see out of them here against Swainsboro.
Well, consistency, execution, and take care of the football. You know, we're going to have to our running backs have to be good blockers in what we do. That's really the way Dorian found his way into the starting lineup, and the fact that he's a technician. He tries to do everything right, and you're going to get 100%. But he starts at our Willie linebacker. Okay, Jamarcus Knight is a heck of a running back. Does a great job. He's been a little bit banged up, and trying to get him back at 100% healthy. But those two young men are alternating, if you will, at that. You can call them 1A and 1B. It's just somebody's in the starting lineup and the other one's playing just as much. So both those young men did a good job right there. We think that Dontavius Cannon can be exactly what you want in a wing T fullback. That was his first game that he's really ever played in the other night.
Wow.
He's got mop-up duty, but as far as being a starter and really a guy that's being counted on heavily, that was his first time. And we thought that things went well. You'll see at some point during this season, he gets out in the open and there's nobody going to catch him, okay, because he's got top-end speed, but he's also a very physical blocker for us and does a great job. Still needs to continue to improve on that overall execution, making the right steps and doing some of those type things, but he's getting better with that. And then Trav is more or less, he's a seasoned veteran. He's played so many snaps on Friday nights, although he's a junior. He was a full-time starter last year, and that experience makes it better. And we've already talked about Jeff a little bit and their quarterback. And, I thought when Rylan Yates went in the game, he handled his first night under center pretty doggone good. And then still a little bit behind for us right now, trying to recover 100% from that broken leg. But doing a good job for us is Bennett Lake. He got some reps, but actually by the time we got him in, the game was kind of out of hand. And Coach Riley's calling the plays when our JV guys are in the game because he's working with them more closely than I do and knows what their strong things are. And at the end of the day, he came over there 2 or 3 times. You want me to let Rylan get a pass or two in here to see if he can, get a little confidence? And the same with Bennett. And I'm saying, no, we're up 40 points. I don't want the people at Hawkinsville feeling like we're trying to run up the score on them, So let's just keep it on the ground.
Well, I tell you, you're right in the fact Rylan did a pretty good job, as did Benton. I saw him get in there and get some action. Saw a lot of good things from some of those, seconds teamers that were coming in there. One thing I do just want to mention, 2 things actually, before we get out of here. I know you got some things to do, Coach. One, I saw I'm going to call it an onside kick attempt where we put a pooch kick up, was able to get down the field, catch that, recover that ball. Don't know what the flag was there. We'll just let that go. I'll let you explain that if you want. But I thought that was pretty cool execution there by our special teams. And then 2, I know Rylan does a little playing time there on the defensive side of the ball as well. Saw him really fight through a couple of blocks, keeping that outside shoulder free, keeping leverage, and letting our guys scrape and make plays on the corners. Thought he did pretty well at that linebacker position there. So just let you tip on those 2 things for a minute.
Well, I think you're exactly right. Rylan, has a linebacker mentality about him, who plays
Yeah.
quarterback, and sometimes that gets him in trouble a little bit at quarterback.
Yeah.
You know, the quarterback has got to be the guy that's even keel and don't let his emotions overtake him, and a play before give you an issue on the next play, where linebackers want to tighten their chin strap and go hit something. And Rylan, you know, he's needs to continue in the weight room, continue to get stronger. I mean, he's only a sophomore. You forget that this kid was in his first game of his 10th grade year without a lot of experience in that regard. But I thought he did a good job. He punched for us. He's a holder for us on extra points. Some teams we play against, Ryland might be a better option for us at linebacker than Dorian Carcamo may be, and vice versa. It depends on kind of what we're playing against and what we see. But I thought Ryland had a good night. The thing on the kickoff, it's after on a free kick opportunity, which that means they can't rush it or whatever. You know, that would be after on a kickoff, what they call free kick opportunities. The ball has to hit the ground before you can recover it. Now, there is some ambiguity in the rule book. It says that you can't interfere with an opponent's ability to catch the ball. You know, I'm trying to argue with them just a little bit that they didn't have anybody around. Now, truth be told, Joe, that's not an onside kick. We're not trying. All we're trying to do is pooch it across the field and make them fair catch it.
Gotcha.
So that we don't have an opportunity to give up a long kickoff return. But it turns into an onside kick a lot of times because they're asleep over there and that person doesn't step up and signal fair catch. And the kick was shorter the other night than where we want our kicker to place that ball. So we weren't trying to onside kick it, but we do get about 3 or 4 times a year we end up with a turnover off of that, and it's not what we're intending or the purpose of it. We like it when it happens.
Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting play, Coach. And then the conversation I saw on the field, you know, right there as you were discussing with the officials.
I was trying to get it in, and they wouldn't have it.
I hear you, Coach. Well, I know we got to run, so I'll leave you with this last question here. Again, in our coaches show presented by Holy Smokes Barbecue. Again, before I let it pass, I have twice in my head already. Congratulations to Trav Bostic receiving the Roche Farm and Garden Player of the Game trophy from the scrimmage against Hawkinsville. Kid had a great game, so we're proud to let him have that. Thanks for letting us have that moment on the field, Coach. We'll try to do that every game. We will do it every game.
Awesome.
So that's cool. But let's talk about Friday here in the Shamrock Bowl. What do you want to see? What do you expect? Talk to our fans and everybody listening in here.
You don't know what to expect in game one. You know, I hope, and this is, you never know, I hope we have our young men in condition well enough to play a whole football game. And I know we don't, but nobody knows going into game one how far you're going to be able to go before you hit the wall. Right. You know, everybody's going to hit the wall in game one. Dublin's going to, Swainsboro's going to. But hopefully we've done a good enough job with our conditioning to have our young men at that point. You know, I feel like both football teams are going to be very physical. They're going to run to the ball. They're going to strike people. And if we're not willing to do that, then there's no way we can get out with a win against Swainsboro. And I'm sure they feel the same. You know, I tell our guys all the time, and I do believe this, most of the time, game one of the season is really not won by somebody. Game one in the season is normally lost by someone, and it's because of mistakes or turnovers or penalties that teams generally continue to improve on throughout the course of the year. And hopefully we're in a disciplined enough place, and the practice has put us in a position that we can play a very clean football game in game one.
Very good. Well, Coach, we certainly do look forward to it. We'll be talking to you. You'll see Coach Tommy down there on the sideline. He'll be engaging with you when he can. We look forward to a full Shamrock Bowl here on Friday night. And of course, we'll be on the other side of the radio talking to you beginning at about 6 o'clock. So thank you so much, Coach, for being part of our Holy Smokes Barbecue Coaches Show here each and every week. And we'll see you on the sideline.
No problem, buddy. Thank you.